Oh, this is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones. And, mate, we are still 3 weeks away from the next block of internationals. This lull period has just got everyone, hurry up with the international rugby.
How's it, Brett? Yeah, but there's so much good rugby going on. I think
there is.
I glutted out this weekend. I was, you're a hoops man. A man who likes hoop jerseys, and the NPC, man, when you're watching those matches, you start getting dizzy with the hoops because they have hoops on their socks too. It's amazing.
They do it properly. And there was a couple of very interesting semi-finals in New Zealand. We'll touch on them a little later. It's episode 37 of the 8-9 Combo Rugby podcast already. And let's get into the rugby week with cheers and jeers from the weekend. And you are away, my friend. Cheers.
Three cheers, but so quickly.
3 cheers.
Damien Willemse slotting a sort of a three iron drop goal to take the Stormers out above and finally get over the bogey team, the Munster. NPC, I loved listening to Tony Johnson, our friend, commentating on a Bay of Plenty, and I liked the sign in the crowd that said, "Up the Bay." That just sounded kind of rude. But there were some great tries. And then
how far up the bay?
Finally, this moment of unity among the hemispheres and the various codes was I was watching the Stormers game, and there was a line out that was pulled up by the referee who said, and I don't use referees' names very much, he just said that it wasn't straight, but there was no contest. And on Twitter, our sort of mutual, therapy session, good people, good-hearted people, so not all being ridiculous. We just all, first of all, didn't know whether that rule was being applied in the IRC. Second, we didn't know if it was, how much contest. I think Tyburn had kind of an arm in the middle. And then the third was, how skew can you throw it, since we don't really have it, and since we belong to a code and a rule that is like getting Botox and lifts and jumps and implants all the time. We don't even know what the rules are anymore. We just all kind of had bafflement. Okay, whatever.
I saw the photo of that one, and it looked like a classic case. Like it wouldn't have count as a contest. Like certainly in Super Rugby, for it to be a contest, the jumper actually has to get up in the air.
It's almost like Tyburn was just, his arm was like, "Hey, that's wrong."
Contest it. But that one was taken well outside the line of the line out. And so, and the rule has been in Super Rugby that if it's taken on the outside shoulder, they'll pull it up for not straight.
When we say rule, we mean the law. A general understanding. It's not written in there how skewed it can be.
The outside shoulder has always been that's actually taking it too far. So that one was
my cheer was for the unity, and that we all admitted we had no idea.
Didn't know whether he was in or out. It looked weird, but we didn't know why. Yes, no, I saw that. That was good. My cheers for you is former renowned international referee Nigel Owens, and we're going to get into this shortly in the main part of the pod. But for a quote for an online story that appeared over the weekend around the 20-minute red card, it did not cast Nigel Owens in a great light for a respected former international referee. And I'm going to read the whole quote here. He said, "I'm against the 20-minute red card because if you've been sent off, you've done something reckless that has put another player at great risk, or you've committed an act of thuggery. A red card means you deserve to be off the pitch, so I don't see why there should be a middle ground." And it's that you deserve to be off the pitch. He's missed a major trick there of the 20-minute red card, in that the offending player is still not coming back on the field. And as I say, at worst, he comes across as not understanding it. At worst, he comes across as being completely wrong. At best, he's missed a trick there. He's ill-informed, and I don't think that actually helped the conversation much across the weekend.
Nigel's been used in a strange way. I saw him perform in Scotland, and it was very funny, by the way. But when he's on this sort of, I don't know, World Rugby Pass cameo things, he's in a barn with some
this
animals.
Wasn't RugbyPass either. I can't actually remember what outlet it was, but it was just a rugby article.
I know, but I'm going wider on Nigel. And when I see him in the barn with his animals, and he's got a little, tablet, he's remarkably imprecise about whatever dilemma he's supposed to discuss. And I always come away thinking, I'm not sure he's the right guy for this. I always thought he created good games because he let a lot of stuff go.
Yes.
If we want to be a technical guy, then maybe we should get more of a technical referee to do this job.
Yes. He received plaudits as a referee for what he didn't pull up.
As a comedian, he freely admits that, by the way. He's like, I don't know. I don't even know. I don't know half the rules.
Yeah. And which is always going to go down well on the after dinner circuit. No doubt at all. We have a very different kind of chat coming up next. And we're curious to see how and where it goes. It's up right after this. But there's no one to add. So we are going to try something different this week, and it's different in that it's just me and Harry that are going to have the chat, and we're going to see where we end up on a couple of topics that we wanted to cover, and this sort of in-between period felt like the time to try something like this, isn't it? This is what we're trying to achieve, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think this is what, our YouTube audience kind of always wants us to do. People say, I want you to discuss some of these current issues.
You two don't talk enough.
And like, I think it's good because I think on the topics we've chosen, we have some points of difference, but also I think we can discuss them in a way maybe we can all start to do more. What I don't like is ridiculous arguing online where no one ever gets anywhere. No one ever changes anyone's mind. No one's even trying to change anyone's mind because they're being so terrible to each other that in the end you're like, I think you actually made sense, but now I'm never going to agree with you because I don't like you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. So for the first part of this conversation, we're going to there's two parts to this chat that we want to do, and we're going to touch on the law variations that are going to be in place for the Autumn Nation series in November, and we'll go through them first and foremost and make sense of what we can. But where we actually want to go after it is a broader conversation about law variations and why they're happening so often and why rugby seems to be on this endless quest to change the game when sometimes, the game is actually fine, for the most part. So let's get into the laws as itself and Six Nations Rugby, which is the six home nations. Six Nations Rugby is the Sanzar company for effectively confirmed the law variations that will be in use for the Autumn Nation series in November. And there's three main elements to it. The first one being certainly the most contentious and certainly the most argued over the last few days being the 20-minute red card for technical offences. And the Six Nations Rugby announcement confirmed a very important element that until they announced it, it wasn't clear whether it was still available for this series. And that being that referees will still retain the ability to award a permanent red card for deliberate and dangerous foul play. And now that is the way that this law trial has been used in Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship for the last 3 years. I think from memory, there's only been a handful of straight reds in Super Rugby. There was 2 of them in one game this year when the Fijian Drua sort of went a little bit off script down in Melbourne one night, and there was elbows.
Ooh, that was a rough game.
That was a rough game.
Josh Cannon's head was open up or something.
That's right. Right. So they were both straight red cards on the night. So the 20-minute red card is, they're saying technical offences, and what they're really talking about, I suppose, is high tackles, which is the absolute vast majority of red cards here now. Now, this variation on the law trial will run throughout the Autumn Nation series, and it differs to the standalone 20-minute red card proposal that's going to be discussed by the wider game in November. And I think it differs in that it's the permanent red card is the differing point. And so I actually wonder whether Six Nations Rugby have brought this in, and if the Six Nations are saying, let's actually use this in the Autumn Nation series so that we can get the data we need to say, no, we are not going ahead with this law. We tried it. We don't like it. I actually wonder if this is the motivating factor about it. So on merit, like 20-minute red card, where are you sort of standing on this? And the argument about 20-minute red card is that, and obviously the offending player doesn't come back on, but the team affected can replace them after the 20-minute period. So they are down a man for the rest of the game, obviously, and the judicial process will take care of the offending player thereafter.
Yeah, I mean, I think I understand the technicality of it and how a referee will understand it, and how if I'm a coach and I'm talking to my players, not much will change on the playing style. I do think that the idea that a 5-week set of games is going to provide you much of a sample size is kind of weird.
Yes.
Because the big elephant in the room is, what are they telling the refs behind the scenes to do? They can up or they can downscale, they can calibrate. We've seen that in, say, aerial battles, or sometimes there's a trendy thing to ping and card. And so, you could go about it different ways. So what we don't know, what we're about to see is whether referees will use what I call the baby red as the bailout, and it's like going to be, we're looking for really crazy headshots, punches, gouges, trips, someone calling the referee, a terrible name. Is that what the red is? Because that's what we always were, right?
They are rare in the game these days. Well, that sort of thing hardly ever happens.
But that was always in the game, and it was always very rare. Like, you had to work to get to be sent off. And so I like the constancy of having a sent-off thing because, number one, I like stats. I like stories. I like grand slams in golf or tennis, where there's a tapestry that works. You can kind of compare things. I don't like the forever changing. So there was a way to do this, which is just stop this incessant red carding of things that clearly were more yellow card, and we just kind of went that way. But behind that door is the door of concussion lawsuit. So, I get that they're trying to do something that can tell their lawyers and their risk consultants, but we did something for 5 or 6 years. We carded the hell out of everything. And then, and for me, I'm like, okay, so then did you settle the case or not? Because if that's hanging over us the whole time, we're still going to have to show it. So I think this baby red is the way to say we're still doing something, but then appease what I call probably the players associations and some of the coaches. Like, man, I mean, obviously the guy's just trying to tackle a guy on the ball. It's in the chest. It comes up. It clips his chin. Is that really a red card? So what we don't know is, I did this little funny schematic for you. You like the color variations. Is referees have to say, is it no penalty or no penalty? Is it penalty? Is it yellow? Is it yellow? Is it baby red? Is it red? Or is it red? And I think there's some unanswered questions with this.
I think at one point you were calling it the Perpignan red, weren't you?
Exactly.
It was sort of half red, half yellow.
The question is like, so we have 2 yellows right now equal a red, but is the 2 yellows now equal to the baby red or the real red?
And that's a good question. I can't answer that. The other part of it that I don't know is that, again, in Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship this year, what referees were doing, and we know this, Brett Cronin confirmed it for us, they were just saying, does it reach yellow card threshold? Yes, it does. Great. You're off.
Yes.
And then the offence itself was then looked over further, and then it was upgraded to red.
And that seemed like it was working.
And that worked. That actually worked.
Yeah.
What I don't know about the Automation series is whether that is in play again, and then whether, if a player is given a 20-minute red card, does the same process happen? Actually, that is worse than we thought. That needs to be upgraded to a full red. I don't know if that's in play.
Oh, I see. Are you saying that the ref has to declare he's going straight red, or is he saying, hey,
they can
Booth,
do that.
decide whether it's yellow or baby red?
Yes.
Or like straight red.
What I actually do, so I don't know whether they would just go for yellow card threshold first and foremost, and then do the work off the field, or equally, if they quickly work out that that's actually red card, and they go to the 20-minute red, can that then be upgraded? I don't know that. It's not been. I'm going to assume that it's not, because it's not been clearly said anywhere that that's in. And I make that point because, again, Six Nations Rugby went to the extent of saying the 20-minute red card is in, but the permanent red is still there. They expressly said the permanent red will still be there. I'm not sure that the off-field referral, which is what it was, I'm not sure if it's in place.
Yeah.
I'll happily stand corrected on this. For
the phrase you used, it's not been clearly said. I think we could use that a lot in the regard. And
this is going to get said a lot.
Rugby does that kind of makes its own job harder is be very clear. Explain what stakeholders you mean when you say things were discussed here and there. And what is the main point? Are we thinking that things that should have been red were be yellowed, or too many things that should have been yellow were redded? And just come clean, like give us some stats, for example, and say it turns out that we were getting too crazy on the cards, and then maybe just scale them back instead of doing this. Like, why do you have to do this? I don't get it.
And we'll probably get onto this side of that shortly. There was a good example. There was a red card in the Scarlets Bulls game on the weekend, and a lot of the reaction was, "Oh, that was a ridiculous red card. That should never have been a red card." That sort of tackle, and I know that tackle happened late in the game, so a 20-minute red card wouldn't have made any difference. That's not the point. That kind of tackle is exactly where this 20-minute red card has come about, where it's the one where you go, oh, is it yellow? Is it red? What they're actually saying is, no, he's always upright. It probably does meet red card threshold, but there was not accidental elements, but there was reasons for it. It might have bounced up off the ball. It's that kind of thing. So that tackle from the weekend. I know what you're saying. No,
I'm going to go back even further. What does my head in is about 6 or 7 years ago, I got berated by all these people who were saying you've got to get away from judging intent. You're always going to have to judge whether something is a rugby play that goes wrong or something that's just completely not a rugby play. Like I do a swinging arm around a rock and I catch you in the nose. That's never a rugby play. So I'm in threat of a red. Yeah. When we get a little tiny calibration wrong in a very dynamic game where people are moving and shifting and you juke there and there's a slippery. I mean, I've always thought now we're getting back to what I was saying all along is let's just not punish outcome. Because, proverbial criminal law, if I shoot into a crowd, I miss everyone. That's much worse than if I'm shooting a bird and it lands on you. So, and we got way too far away from like, oh, just protect the head. And I think that was from behind the scenes. Someone said, be seen to doing something. Just do something. Yeah.
There's certainly elements.
Surely a ref can say that's a rugby play. You're tackling someone at high speed and you got it a bit wrong. That's a yellow.
They do. They kind of do judge intent because we often hear referees saying, or the TMO process say, and it might have even happened in that red card on the weekend, where they will say the tackler is always upright.
Sure.
So what they're saying is his intent was always to hit high.
Exactly. And that's coachable. And I think this always should come back to the training paddock. So when I get my guys together on a Monday and I go, hey guys, listen, and that's also why some of the resistance comes to this is there were teams who did that better than other teams. Some teams reacted better. And now this is sort of feeling like, oh, wait, are we trying to kind of like bail them out or something? So I think that's, and here's what the problem is. There's only 5 weeks of these autumn nations and there's going to be some spectacular, weird events. And we're going to go, see.
Yes, no doubt. And, look, there's an element to it. And again, we might, I'm just working out whether we there's an element to it that says, the tackle law that said there cannot be any contact with the head and neck. That's not new. That's been in for a long time now.
You were never supposed to tackle someone's head. Yeah.
No, you weren't. But it was happening. And again, they had to be seen to be doing something. So they said head and neck is sacrosanct. My point being that the adjustment still hasn't quite happened in some teams. And that's in some teams at all levels. Some teams have coached it and have adjusted to it better than others. So we're sort of in this situation.
I always thought that in a long tournament you could actually find out those teams because they're actually very constant and you find them. And I always thought finding is actually going to be a lot more motivational. Because as we talked to referees and talked about these things, is every team, right or wrong, delusionally thinks they're going to have an advantage on cards. They enter the season like, no, let's have really strict cards because we think we'll have less cards. And then by game 10, they're like, oh man, we have so many cards.
Yes, exactly right. Just while you've been saying that, I've opened a spreadsheet because of course I have. And in Super Rugby this year, there were 19 players went to the judiciary And I'm quickly scrolling through here, and it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I think I'm up to 12 for high tackles, essentially.
Yeah.
And so they are the vast majority of them. And it's telling.
To me, they're almost always yellow. They're yellow because it's someone doing something that is 1 millimeter this way. It's yellow and red. I'm just like, that's yellow. And then when they were never, like you said, they were never at the right height, then I think about red. But if it's he's adjusting and people are moving. I mean, you try to tackle Cheslin Colby. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
So
particularly if you're 6 foot.
Where are you?
I think of those 11 or 12. I think 9 of them were upgraded from yellow. So that again, that's the process. One thing I do want to touch on, and it's this argument that I find really spurious and
spurious, disingenuous,
pointless, disingenuous. Yep, to say it's just going to open up a scenario where a team can take out a star player because inferring that the 20-minute red card means a team can just take a player out, they cop the 20-minute red card, and they bring another player on. And I've had to make this point repeatedly across the weekend. In the 3 years of Super Rugby and the Rugby Championship, that has not happened once. That scenario they're talking about could happen has been available to teams now for the last 3 years, and it's not happened once. So the question is, why hasn't it happened? Well, it hasn't happened because a team can't afford to lose a player for 6 weeks, because that's what would happen. If you send a player out to intentionally take out Finn Russell or Andre Pollard or Damien McKenzie or whoever, and they get sent off rightly, they will go to the judiciary, they'll cop 6 weeks at least, and the player setting out to maim the opposition star player will actually be in a worse state. So that is not going to happen.
Yeah, it's a weak argument, and I don't like taking on weak arguments as the best arguments to spar with because I don't get anywhere in those. I try to take on the best arguments of my opponent. If it was going to happen, let's just be honest, it would be at a World Cup final where it was all on the line, and for 4 years you got to hear the other guy say beat you. So you'd take out Dupont and Olivon, and you'd use your scrubs to do that, and then you got 20 minutes later, Eben Etzebeth comes on, and it's fine. I get that. That's possible, right? That's possible.
I get the argument.
Ice hockey, they do that in.
Yeah.
There's examples in sports that are not rugby where they have literally done that. So, But for me, it's more about that whoever's bringing in a complexity into a game, that when I'm sitting down, especially in America, and I'm trying to explain things to people who don't, they want to like rugby. They're at the park. I took them there. They're not really talking about. They like the smashing tackles. Quite frankly, they think it's cool. There's no pads. The main thing is that
when you're there kicking a football down the oval.
The main thing is we don't know why a penalty happened, and we're not quite sure what the referee was doing there. And so I think when you keep adding, like someone said, our good friend Jeff Parks, like this will be good for the refs. I'm thinking, I'm not sure it will be, because now he's going to justify gradations on both sides of it, and I think he's going to catch stick now all over the place. And so if I'm a referee, I'm like, can we just go back and have fewer?
And so on that point, we don't know what a referee is. That is another thing that will come in for the Automation Series. They're talking about introducing an NFL-style referee mic in use, where match officials can explain their decisions to viewers in attendance at the stadium and obviously are watching home on the broadcast. And on the surface, like, this is a really good thing. We actually get this a little bit. Actually, no, not just a little bit. We hear most TMO conversations now anyway on the broadcast.
Yeah, this is not even a change. This is just
on
better.
the broadcast. You can hear the mic anywhere, mic everywhere. At the ground, you hear the TMO conversations for deliberations most of the time. This is taking it a step further, where referees will actually be able to explain decisions that they've just made to the game. Now, I love this in principle. I'm not sure how it's going to work in practicality. Is Carl Dixon going to walk to the side and stand there with his hands on hips, and he's going to go, after reviewing the incident, we rule that X, Y, Z? Like, is he going to do it? Is it going to be that scripted? Is it going to be that deliberate, or is it just going to be okay, what we've realized, what we worked out here is I need to see how it's going to work to be sure about this one.
I like it. I'm all in favor because it's not a change
I like
at all.
it.
It's
I
just
like
a
the
thing
idea.
that's already happening, and only some
Yep.
people in the inner sanctum are hearing it. And this, democratizes it and says that if you pay your money and you go and you travel to a game, you should get the same service as the journos and the people on TV. The
It
second
should
thing
never be a
is
disadvantage to see a game live.
the best referees I know are already doing this. They're like
Yes,
really
they are.
explanatory. And I find that the referees that are kind of shit, and there are some, they don't have a good way of explaining. So I think they'll be outed, like, oh, you didn't even know why you ruled that way. So I think
Yes.
it might have the incentive for some of them. Oh, I don't know, I'm ready to explain it, so I won't blow the whistle, which I'm all in favor of, by the way.
Yeah, that could happen too. I think this will certainly out the better communicators.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think it's nice for them too, because they can make the history, set the narrative right then, instead of some weird narrative developing that they have to defend post-match. It's like, no, in the match, I told you what I saw.
Yeah,
and I can make mistakes, but this is what I was thinking.
This is what we ruled. Whether we got it right or wrong is immaterial. This is what we ruled for these reasons. Exactly.
In the park in Murrayfield and also all across MLR, on the screen, they put up a thing that explains the referees' calls. And sometimes it's not right. I can tell. Like, I was just looking at Murrayfield going, no, that's not what he ruled. No. I like the idea of the refs taking some charge of his destiny, because he's going to get raked over the coals one way or the other. At least be able to say what it was. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And if it brings a bit of consistency about it, that's, in terms of explanation, that's a good thing. You're right. Some stadiums do it well. Some stadiums do it better than others. But yes, there are certainly times where the stadium scoreboard just gets it wrong. That was not offside. It was for, inside of the ruck. The last one is the countdown clock for scrum line-out kicks at goal. So the only real difference there is that conversions, you only have 60 seconds from the point where the referee makes the mark rather than 90. Penalties are still 60 seconds. You've also got 30 seconds from the referee making a mark to form a scrum, 30 seconds from an AR making the mark to form a line-out. That's been in play for Super Rugby for a couple of years. And that actually works well. That does work well.
Yeah, because I think what happened was, when you introduce a shot clock, it's almost an invitation to go the full shot clock, which doesn't make your kicking better, and also it's annoying. And I think there was always fast kickers, and a lot of the kickers that were quick were really good. Like, Franz Stain was really quick. Mornay Stain was really quick. Those guys that didn't think long and think wrong. I'll tell you this: rugby used to have a rule back in the old days, in the 1800s, where you could charge down the conversion attempt from the moment that the person put the ball on the ground. Like, there was no, you didn't have to wait. Imagine that. Right. And it made conversion so difficult. And bear in mind that the try was worth nothing unless you converted it. So, like, it was very difficult to score because they could just start charging. And
the try was literally to get a kick at goal, wasn't it?
And it was the player who did it. So what they did is, there was always a holder, and the holder would put it down when the guy was ready, and then they would kick. And so I do think there's an element that I'm always a fan of this. Of, let's go back to the original scheme, and what is there an element of hurry in the kicks? And I think yes. I think rugby has always thought you're not supposed to have a minute to contemplate the sky while you kick.
And and for something like a line out, like I think sometimes teams take the piss a bit, because there's the pre-huddle committee meeting, and then they walk up to the line out, and then they faff about whether it's 6-man, 5-man, 4-man. They're mucking around with all that. Then there'll be a call for the line out, and the hooker the whole time is standing there ready to throw. He knows what's been coming from the huddle. Like, just get on with it.
Well, so I'm a little bit different on that. Probably on the other side of that is that I think games are too short. When you go to a game, I don't like it that they're over in 2 hours. Every other sport, I mean, golf is 4 hours. If you go to an actual round, you want to stay there for most of the day. Cricket's like I always thought it was an all day thing, drinking beer. Even basketball games, they're supposed to be 48, but they're like 2.5 hours. NFL's 4 hours.
Last quarter of basketball games.
UFC is like 8 hours. I mean, everything is, to me, it's fun. I don't really care. And I'm really here for line-out variations. Speaking of variations of law, like line-out variations are one of my favorite things in the last 2 years. People doing crazy stuff at line-outs.
Yes.
And you do have to script that. Yeah.
So the classic example being the Maul tries the box scored against the Wallabies earlier in the year, where they threw to the back, transferred to the front. Yeah. Now, Now, was that at which point did that play come about? Was it in the pre-huddle? Was it in the walk-up? Was it in the call?
Some of those apparently are preloaded.
Some of those are known.
And then there's one later against Argentina where Eben did a no-look flip back, which was really cool.
Exactly.
So I think there's, and I saw in Premiership this week there was a lot of actually it was top 14, and I saw a really good move by La Rochelle that was so intricate that I knew they had to do some. Yeah, and the other thing is sometimes the backs will kick 40 meters. And the lineouts over there, like I'm just saying, like I'm not saying that people couldn't run there in 30 seconds. I'm just saying let's not get too snarky about our props because we want to keep them in the game.
Yes, and you remember that was the point Andrew Kellaway made last year, saying that if it's the 65th minute and the props haven't been replaced yet, and they're buggered.
And they're lifting in the line out too, man. That's hard.
Is there a risk to tiring props to make them fall? I get that argument too. I do.
I think that's probably 30 seconds probably outright, and I don't think
it
refs
works
will be
well.
too strict about it. We'll see. I don't know.
If it takes 35 seconds, I think it's going to get pulled up.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah,
I think it would be a bold referee to pull one up, but look at
this does actually emphasize fitness, and in my observation in World Cups nowadays is. There's such a gulf between the top teams and the other ones on fitness that it's almost like when you do more and more regulations in real life, the biggest companies can survive. Oh, we got to do this and this. Oh, we got a department of HR. We'll do it. Yep. So they can play Ireland and the Box can play any style you want. All Blacks too, probably. It's not so clear when you're building a team around what you think you could do. And I'm just, working with MLR teams, and they have like a 3-year, 4-year plan. Like, who should we recruit? Yep. Should we recruit more heavy guys or more light guys? And so I think, let's just let's get something set here for a few weeks, 5 years, and do that for a while.
And this is your point, isn't it? That the game is intent on making changes to the laws or variations to the laws all the time, and we don't really get a chance to bed down changes that we've made because next year we're making more changes. And so in 2 years' time, when the game has changed again, was that because of this year's law variations? Was it last year's variations? Was it the variations from 3 years ago that are finally now making sense?
Right. Just take it like a real world example. You're getting into the red zone. So you enter the red zone and you have kind of a philosophy and you Exeter. Exeter was just the monsters at scoring on the red zone. But then they changed the latch rule, and then they also did the hold up over the line. That was de-Exetering Exeter, and then all their purchases and all their contracts had been around that kind of forward, and then suddenly it was different. Now you enter the red zone, and so down the line you're thinking in a couple of years maybe it's the first stop kills them all. So I don't want to go to the corner so much because if I get held up on the first stop, I'm gonna have to go face anyway. Yep. Maybe I'll pick and go, but I might get held up because the closer you get to the line, the easier it is to scoop you back and get held up. So maybe I just take the 3. And so if the end result of all that is I will take the 3 more often, I'm not sure that's what people said they wanted. Yeah. And so this is the danger of, hyper engineering a game. And I was looking across other games. Okay, first of all, boxing has almost changed nothing in so many years. Soccer is remarkably stable. Tennis has been like tie breaks, electronic review, the double hit and bathroom breaks, and then a coach can actually talk to you now. Basketball maybe was the closest, but still it's about 3 per decade, and it's mostly about the 3-point line. It was mostly about shot clocks. But I mean, there's been like 2 in about 20 years now. Yeah. And then you look at what else?
I feel like I've been able to keep up with basketball, which is saying something.
Golf was funny though. Golf had like the stymie rule where you had to chip over the ball because it had to be 6 inches or more away before you could mark it. So you had to literally hit the ball over your opponents. It was all like match play. I think there was some other rules, but I mean, like it's been since 1700, right? So we are the only sport I can think of that does this incessant change. And I was just thought like, a lot of rugby pseudo fans or like restaurant critics. They just like, that wasn't very good. I mean, tennis players never care if there's a struggle between someone who can negate you like Andrew Murray and a full-on Federer or a Nadal who can wear you out versus Djokovic ending the point. We like the clash of styles. Yeah. Why are we so obsessed with it's got to be all like phaseball? Because I really enjoyed the World Cup mostly because the top teams were all so crazy different.
Yeah. And I certainly all those other sports that you mentioned, I sort of feel like any tweaks that have been there has been around, not so much around the fabric of the game, but just the way that it's the way that it's officiated. So
Yeah.
it's video referees for it's video referees for scoring plays. It's it's DRS in cricket. It's video review and things like that in basketball and that sort of stuff. The game is still the game, and like in rugby, for example, like the game evolves, and we're seeing a lot more tap plays now from free kicks, and I think that is partly because teams have realised that, you know what, just kicking sideways to get a 5-metre line out isn't that big an advantage now, because teams are set. They're a lot better at defending mauls. So the better play is actually to take the tap from centre of the field and create your own space and actually fan teams out more. And we're seeing tries from them.
And some of those discoveries happen without changing the law. Like in basketball, forever and ever, it was like work the game into the paint and take good shot. Take 5 passes before you take a good shot. And then they realized just mathematically that was wrong. You should take some terrible shots, take a lot of them quicker in the shot clock, because that 3-2, 150% of points validated a 15% less shooting. And so I think rugby is getting analysts. I've talked to some analysts that are much better now at breaking that down. There's some scenarios in rugby where it's just worth it. But both because you might get your opponent carded if you keep doing something. And the other thing is, you really can, with the right tap, you see Ireland, they put the ball in between their legs. So the back foot is back here. That's what they tap with. But their front foot's like a meter ahead. They're like 4 meters from the line. You can't tell me that Malcolm Marks, 4 meters from the line, is not going to get close. He will get close every time.
Yeah. It's interesting. Have we covered everything off here? Is there anything else you need to touch?
Yeah, no, I think what's interesting for our game as well, the idea of being who we are, because I think we have such a beautiful game, and I would hate for people to think from the outside that we get almost known as that sport that keeps changing itself. It's, at some point, you're like, we really have a cool sport, and it's almost like I'm having to explain to people the game that don't know it, and then go, oh, but wait, we might change all those things I just told you. So, that's my only prophecy, is we got to stop this for a while.
So then the second part that we wanted to cover off in this week's chat is that Joseph Sua'ali'i is now a Waratah. This is the former Sydney Roosters NRL player, prodigious schoolboy rugby talent. There was proper tug of war to get his services straight out of school. The NRL had to grant an allowance to the Roosters so that he could make his NRL debut before he turned 18. He's a superb player, high profile Rugby Australia contract, a pet project of Hamish McLennan, and he came out over the weekend trying to get himself back in the headlines again. He is now a rugby player. He's now getting around in Waratahs gear at New South Wales training. He was in Canberra last week, with the Brumbies and Waratahs players in a Wallabies camp, and got to say, it's an exciting time. It's going to be very, very interesting to see how and where he slots in to the New South Wales and ultimately the Wallabies setup.
Yeah, we thought about approaching this topic because I got to confess, I've only watched 2 league games in my life. One was in Wigan live and one was on TV with our friend Rob C. And I just tried to understand what was going on, and he helped me. My reflection on the ones I remember coming over and being good, like Izzy Folau, Sonny Bill Williams, Brad Thorne, and Sam Burgess, they were all physically imposing. Like they had physical attributes that were put them in the top 1% of rugby. So they handled collisions really well. All those guys I can think of, they really did not care that you smashed them, because I didn't feel like our smashes were as smashy as theirs. But they all seemed to struggle a little bit, not Brad Thorne, but the other backline guys, with the decision making on, do I pass, do I carry, do I kick? Yeah. And then an understanding of what I do to my teammates when I make you resource the ruck in a weird way. like just not thinking about that ruck, because I think the league doesn't have that. So I was kind of just wanted to ask you questions about it.
Sure.
Does everyone kick in league, or are there actual designated playmakers like a number 10 kind of?
No, it's mostly the halves. It's mostly the half back in the 5, 8, 7, and 6, which scrum half, fly half in rugby terms. Mostly the hooker out of dummy half, which is essentially the same as the scrum half in rugby, will do an amount of kicking, but there's not a lot of kicking in.
So when you fail to make it and you have to kick, you have by law you have to kick away. You pass it back.
It's 6 tackles. It's 6 tackles. So most teams will kick on the 5th tackle, because rather than handing over possession right here, we can do it 40 meters away. That's the scientific method to it. Like there's not really a lot of kicking. There is kicking for touch, but there's not really a lot of like territorial, gamesmanship about kicking.
Right. And can you hide someone on defense, or is everyone a good defender?
Yeah. Yes, you can. Mostly they are good defenders, because like your edge back rowers, your middle back rowers, your centers, and all that. A lot of those guys, particularly your middle forwards, those guys are making 40 plus tackles a game. so
40 tackles. Okay.
The average league game now is regularly. Their average league team now is regularly making 300 tackles a game, probably.
Jeez. Wow.
And that's the speed of the game. Like in a half, they talk about completion rates. The number of times you actually got to the 5th tackle. They talk about completion rates, and the number of teams that are getting to half time having completed, 19 of 20, or 22 of 24 times. So their completion rates are really high, which means defensive rates are pretty good as well.
So a guy like Joseph, no problem with the physical aspect. He would have been used to making these tackles. Yeah. It's the placement, or where he's supposed to be.
The positioning is going to be the interesting part.
Rugby union thing. So how do you think how would he come in understanding that, just based on, like, say, Izzy Folau, came in sort of a similar incredible physique, but can he manage the space?
The big advantage that Sua'ali'i has over most backline converts is that he played rugby. He was playing Australian schoolboys rugby 3 years ago. So when I was watching him at Wallabies training here last week, you can actually see that he's still got rugby instincts. Like, he knew his hands are really soft. So he's looking for quick movement with that. He's not just, catch, tuck, take contact. He's looking to promote straight away. His work on the ground for his placement, ruck placement, was pretty good for a guy who has been playing league for a couple of years. So his rugby instincts are still pretty good. The question is going to be certainly about positioning, and this is why I think that he'll start on the wing, and probably on the right wing, in like the number 14. He played a lot of centre for the Roosters this year, but he was playing as a left centre, and centres in rugby league tend to be left and right. So there's the positions have sort of changed a bit in rugby league now.
So he had a zone to defend in.
Yes. There's middle forwards, and then your back rowers. They literally call them edge forwards, and then you're outside that. So as a left centre, he's really only running his side of the post, left-hand side of the post, right.
And is there a guy in front of me? Am I only tackling someone because you missed someone?
And so the opposition right centre is only defending on that side as well. Yeah. So the question is going to be, and this is why I don't think he'll slot into 12 or 13, and particularly not 13 straight away, is that he will have to take some time to get used to the both side game that rugby is.
Yeah. So the argument for that, and I remember it with Sam Burgess and also with Sonny Bill, is you just want to get the guy a lot of ball time, and 12 is, simpler in the sense that you get hit. I mean, like, you get the ball, you get hit.
In some respects, and I think I can probably see him ending up at 12. He played a lot of inside centre through schoolboys. All these highlight videos playing for for Kings, I think it was, the school in Sydney. He's playing 12. Played a little bit of fullback, but he mostly played 12. And he was a really strong runner. Really strong.
I saw some highlights and he
broke
tackles.
His schoolboy highlights are fantastic.
Is he exceptional even in league on that, or there are lots of guys in the league that are that big and that quick?
There are. Yeah, there are, but there is definitely something about him. He's a genuine star of the game, and he's 21. That's maybe the exciting thing about him coming back to rugby is that he's 21. He could potentially play, 3 World Cups.
Right. So do you think that there's a knock-on effect where if he does well because of his sort of swag and style and 21 years old, that there would be some exodus, or do you think it's more of a one-off thing because the money involved?
Yeah, I think it's more likely to be a one-off thing because of the money involved, because Rugby Australia don't have a lot of it.
I mean, they dumped a truck of money on him.
They have dumped a lot of money on him.
I'm not putting you down on technicalities, but how much was it around? How much is he netting?
The first reported contracts, it was a 3-year deal. It gets him past the 27 World Cup, and that was not quite 5 million over the 3 years. But what has emerged is that there's 2 more years as an option in his favour that maintain the 3rd-year rate. So he's in line to make another maybe 3.5, 4 million, and that's where the 9 million figure's coming from.
That's more than a lot of guys who've been playing rugby for a long time, and it's interesting to me because
he will be the highest paid player in Australia by a long way. He will be.
And I get that there's some of those superiorities of athletes, and he certainly has stamina if he played league and he's tackling that much. But I always wondered, the crowded sports market. AFL picks hoops guys now to play.
Yep.
I understand.
Have done for 15 years.
And there's something about that. I think like a Theo McFarlane for Samoa was so good in the World Cup. It's kind of a basketball player. And I was thinking that's actually a really good crossover for rugby. A lock that's got good hands. The RG Sneeman kind of guy. That exists as a power forward.
Just get up and I completely agree with you. But you touched on it there. The crowded market in Australia means it's just harder to get to those players because, particularly if they live in the southern states, if you aren't quite getting through at basketball, and basketball is actually hitting back here now as well, because the NBL in Australia has got really strong links to the NBA in the States. There's proper programs. NBA scouts and colleges are actively recruiting 16, 17-year-old kids out of Australia, male and female, to put them into the college program. So the Pathways program for basketball in Australia is actually really strong, and they're probably not losing as many players to AFL now because, you know what? If I can get picked up in the NBA draft,
D-League,
there's big money to be made.
I ran into Brian Cardinal, former Dallas Maverick, in Sydney Airport, and he said he had been in Australia for about 6 weeks, and they are literally going town to town, and he said unbelievable talent, and they get them to get college scholarships over the US, D-League, and then boom, and they're getting big money.
The Basketball Australia has a centre of excellence here in Canberra at the Australian Institute of Sport, but it is co-run with the NBA.
Yeah,
it's an NBA academy.
Exactly.
Offshore. So, yeah.
So in Rugby Australia's continuing efforts, there's all these great athletes, but they're in these different codes. It still probably does come down to league because it's just, I guess, the most similar because you have to tackle.
Yeah.
And that's a hard thing to teach someone who's not used to it. What do you think in terms of ranking chances now? I mean, pretty on the spot here, but do you think this is someone who's a 50 capper, 20 capper, 100 cap? Like, can you tell yet, or is it too soon?
Both. you can tell he's going to, because the instincts are still there, because he's already got a feel for the game. I don't think there's much doubt that he's going to be a success. I don't think there's much doubt about that. He's a big guy. I said to you last week, if you didn't know he was an outside back, you would swear he's a lock.
Yeah,
that's the dimension of him. He's quite tall. He's not Nick Frost tall, but he's like Jed Holloway, but more lithe, more with a bit of speed.
And you see him as replacing Corbete or Callaway?
I think he'll start on the open side wing, but I wouldn't be surprised if maybe by the back half of Super Rugby next year, that the Waratahs actually try him out in the centres. I wouldn't be surprised at that at all. Whether he makes his test debut, I don't know that he makes his test debut in November. There's certainly an intent to play him in the Australian 15 games against Bristol and England A. I think it would be too soon to straight away throw him into a Wallabies camp. Look, he might brain it in those 2 games, and it's entirely deserved. I'm not. I think Joe Schmidt is probably conservative on that side of things. I think there's an element of let's not rush this kid. He will say, "I'm ready. I will do the job that the team needs." He'll say, "I'm ready to go." I think there'll be a little bit of conservatism about him. Let him find his way in the game. Let him have a season in Super Rugby, and then they'll see where he's at for the Lions next year. Now, Israel Folau made his test debut in a Lions series. That's worth remembering. But he also did that on the right wing. That's why I think he'll start off on the open side wing, and he may work his way into the centres. Where he ends, I think he probably ends up at 12. I know there's a train of thought out there. I know Jeff Parks thinks that his position is going to be 13 on. I think 12 maybe suits him better, because I think 12 is going back to being a ball carrier, but a ball carrier who can create a little bit.
Yeah.
I think that evolution is sort of happening again.
I mean, not knowing how he plays, I'm always skeptical of putting someone on the wing nowadays because of the kicking and the fielding of kicks and the fact that you have to be able to clear. I believe I can find you out more if you're on the wing, whereas at 12...
But Connor Betty doesn't kick a lot.
But that's where you find him out sometimes. Like the way to play against Corbete is to put an aerial, then Moody takes it out of the sky and runs in. So
Sua'ali'i, I'm pretty sure he'll have a decent boot on him. He's a goal kicker as well, so he has got a kicking ability. I didn't see him kick last week, but I think that part of his game is probably okay as well.
Also at 12, you're always restored. Like your Lucy's are right there ready for you. Whereas on the wing, sometimes you have to actually know how to counter ruck, and you have to. It's actually interesting now. I think wings are playing much differently nowadays. I think that's why you have players like that aren't that quick, but they're very like James Lowe, Kellaway. You have some guys that are just really good ball players out there now. And so, it's interesting. I think it's interesting as well how much they're putting him in front of the press. They're not hiding him. He seems to be able to handle stardom.
And he was great. Fair. He was great last week. Up front on first day of camp, and he basically said, "This is nothing I haven't seen before." He handled it really well. My
hot take prediction is the law variations will come to a head in a case involving Joseph, and will bring this discussion all together.
Joseph Sua'ali'i is here to save rugby and the law variations.
or he'll stuff up on the biggest play that we all talk about forever. Poor guy.
And there's that part done. This is the 8-9 Combo Rugby Podcast with Brett McKay and Harry Jones. And mate, that was interesting. I quite enjoyed that. This has gone longer than I thought it might.
No, we got an interesting game. We have a fucking complicated game, and we just try to make it more complicated. But now I'm actually more interested to watch Joseph play. I'm kind of interested to see how that works out. So good on him. Yeah,
there'll be a lot of eyes on him for these Australian 15 games. There's no question about that.
We dropped Jeff Park's name twice. Let's drop it 3 times.
Jeff Parks has written a book called A Year in the Life and Death of the Melbourne Rebels. Thanks to him for sending up an advance copy last week. I'm several chapters in. You have written what I know will be a very, very good review of it for the Roar for next week. It's actually released next Tuesday, October 27, but it is available now for pre-order in paperback and ebook on all the major book-selling platforms, Amazon, Kobo, Booktopia, etc. So have a look out for it. It's called A Year in the Life and Death of the Melbourne Rebels. And Jeff set out to just spend a season with the Rebels and actually go behind the scenes and sort of say, yeah, this is what's involved in a professional rugby setup. What it ended up being was a year-long eulogy, essentially, of a club that ultimately folded. So it's what I've read so far has been it's a fantastic account.
You can tell he set out to write a normal book of day in the life of, embedding with coaches and talking about physios and commercial managers and the equipment manager and who keeps the people on time and who's the coach that cleans things up. And midway through the book, it's like, now it's a full-on Donnybrook between Rugby Australia and Rebels. That's where it gets really fascinating, and Jeff's put kind of in a bad position in a way, because he's writing a book about rugby and suddenly it's like this internecine civil war. I found it to be fantastic. It's 60 chapters. Some of those chapters are 2 pages long. Some are 10, and it's written in present tense, 300 pages, and it really flows. You are living through a season, and there's a real
pace, because there's a chronology to it. There's a real pace to it. Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm saying nice things now because my review is scathing, and he's going to be like, "Oh my god."
No, it's a fantastic read from what I've taken in so far. Quick whip around the grounds, mate, to wrap up this week. Round 5 of the ERC. Leinster are now 7 points clear on top after their big win over Connaught. There's 1 bonus point win between the Lions in 2nd and Connaught in 7th. The standout scores to me, though, on the weekend, I must say, the Lions beat Zebre 10-9. In Palmer,
horrible conditions.
Sharks beat Glasgow 28-24. The Stormers have a win 34-19 over Munster down in Cape Town. So
we're fine. We're building.
The ERC's happening again. So that's good to know that fiction has moved on.
Hey, round 5 of the watching Damien Willemse and Warwick Gallant on the same field at the same time, Mitsubishi and Gaza. It's insanity. Like, they're just running around in circles. It's good fun.
Fair to say teammates don't know what's going on. Round 5 of the Premiership as well. Saracens are back on top after their win over Bristol in the 1v2 derby.
Tough match. Ooh.
Yeah, it was. It was a really good game. Bath are still 2nd. Bristol now slipped to 4th, though, after Leicester beat Gloucester on Sunday. They're round 7 of the top 14 in France. Stade Francais are now 13th after this thumping they copped to Cast over the weekend. Was it 37-13 or something like that? La Rochelle are now 1 point behind Bordeaux after their 32-22 win over UBB, who in turn are 1 point behind Toulouse. So top 3 is pretty tight there.
I just watched that. That was a hell of a game. And
I'll try and check it out.
I think Will Skelton has added some pounds. He looks like a big truck right now. So
were La Rochelle in...
I wouldn't use them.
Were La Rochelle in the less offensive black strip or the absolutely horrendous yellow and white?
Yeah, the dark. Bordeaux was playing the whites, and they had the 2 little stripes on their shorts. And Damien Pinot was running around like he had eaten some bad ratatouille. He was insane. That kid is just annoying as hell, but I like him.
The NPC semis produced two pretty good games in the end. Bay of Plenty beat Canterbury 32-20, and that was a great reward for patience and perseverance, I think, from the Bay. Wellington looked pretty well in control to me, beating Waikato 29-24. So those 2 teams will meet in the final next Saturday afternoon in Wellington it is, and we'll touch on that in Games of the Week later in the week. So make sure you are all subscribed and following as needed and wherever you need to so that you don't miss that. Quick headline from the last 7 days. The one that 2 that stood out to me, South African teams will have to reapply to keep their places in the ERC. I think that's just sort of part of the participation agreements, I assume. There's no suggestion.
No. The story of that is there's a private equity deal with Ackerley, a Seattle-based group, $75 million US for just the commercial rights, 20% version of it. And 7 of the 14 unions oppose it, including the big ones. Western Province cannot because they're under the auspices of, sorry. Yeah, right. But the big ones said, no, we don't want this. And so Saru said, okay, so we're going to make you apply. It's a spank. It's a little bit of a Hamish move.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's very naughty. It's very cheeky that they're doing this now. And they're saying we have to come back and we're going to do this deal. I think the deal will go through, but it's going to be a little sweeter some here and there. Yeah. It's just normal posturing. But Saru was definitely saying we are the boss.
Yeah. There'll be some nervous CEOs approaching the dateline. We have applied for our spot in the ERC again, haven't we?
They just wanted to remind them, So just your place is at the end of the table. Yeah,
the Sharks will not be playing in the ERC from future seasons after an administrative error.
Missed the deadline by a minute. Sorry.
The other one that I saw late last week is that there might be new buyers in line for London Irish, and the headline that caught my eye. Formula One entrepreneur and former driver Eddie Jordan, part of a consortium to bid for London Irish, plotting a Man City-style network of clubs around the globe. So he's obviously got.
I didn't see the story. It's interesting.
I haven't seen too much more of it than that, but there could be a little interesting subplot there.
Yeah, there is something about the London Irish fan base. Is they're kind of a forever. I don't know what the Rebels are looking like, but the London Irish never forget. They want to come back.
I actually saw a headline last week that suggests that the Ireland Union, the IRFU, should buy London Irish and use it as a development team in the Premiership.
Sweet, do it.
Might kill off any plans for the Premiership to merge with the ERC. Any final thoughts for the week?
Oh no, this is actually making me ready to look at the teams across all these competitions now. I'm enjoying games of the week. I hope everyone else is. It's funny because we kind of started out with just picking one or two, and now we kind of go across the slate. But I am enjoying staying in touch with the top 14. I've been talking to about them, but actually it's a great league, and I'm enjoying.
Equally, it helps me stay in contact with the ERC.
Yeah,
because I don't necessarily. I have a way to watch games,
fun,
but it's hard to watch in Australia. So I'm really liking that.
The ERC is insane. I'm telling you, and I just think every single weekend it's funnier than the last one. The Italian, that's like the comedy relief. Like the Italian teams, I love it.
It's like the A League in Australia.
And then the games in Wales, by the way, are so dark that Warren Gatman was in there, and it was a black and white movie. Like that's what it looks like.
Do you have to park your car along the fence and leave your lights on?
That's it.
That then is episode 37 of the 8-9 Combo done. Check the show notes for links to the 8-9 Combo on Twitter and on YouTube as well. Leave us a rating or review wherever you can, and turn notifications and auto download settings and all that sort of stuff to on. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places at Harry Jones and BMC Sport. You'll find links on our socials to Harry's written work on The Roar and my Australian columns on Rugby Pass. And I've touched on, remember that conversation we had with Jared Wright a couple of weeks ago, and I said, could Fiji and Japan come into the Rugby Championship in those 2 years? I've explored that this week on Rugby Pass, so keep an eye out for that. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed, coming from the podcast double act you already had. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we'll be back in your ears in just a few days' time with another edition of Games of the Week.
Come change the law with us. Change the world. I was propping my microphone on a Shakespeare book. Ooh. Good closing scene.